The grand hall of the Roswell mansion gleamed like gold. Chandeliers sparkled above, the floor polished so well it mirrored the glittering shoes of the city's richest men. Tonight was no ordinary evening. Tonight, the daughter of Victor Roswell, the steel tycoon, the man whose name made businessmen tremble, was to meet her future. Victor had invited the wealthiest bachelors, heirs, and magnates from across the country. Every chair was filled with ambition, every smile sharpened like a weapon. These men weren't just seeking love, they were bidding for power. But at the center of it all sat Evelyn Roswell, 17 years old, delicate in appearance but with eyes that spoke more than her lips ever had. She had been raised in silence, not because she couldn't speak, but because she rarely chose to. Her silence was her rebellion, though her father never understood it. Tonight, her father's voice carried over the hall like thunder. "Gentlemen, you are here because my daughter will choose. Not by birth, not by fortune, but by my command." The crowd laughed politely, glasses clinked, and the music swelled. One by one, the candidates approached Evelyn. A shipping heir with a diamond-studded watch bowed deeply. "My lady, I can promise you an empire that will outshine your father's." A tech magnate's son, brimming with arrogance, leaned close. "With me, you'll be more than just Victor Roswell's daughter. You'll be a queen in the modern world." A European count, tall and graceful, kissed her hand. "You deserve royalty, not industry. Choose me, and the world will bow to you." But Evelyn's face remained still. Her eyes flicked to each man and then away, as though their words weighed less than air. Her father shifted uncomfortably, frustration lining his jaw. The parade continued, wealth on display, promises of mansions, private islands, power, and eternal luxury. Yet not once did her gaze linger. She sat unmoved, as though the diamonds offered to her were no more valuable than stones from the street. And then it happened. At the far end of the hall, where servants quietly moved with trays of champagne, she saw him. He wasn't dressed in silk or velvet. His suit was plain, slightly frayed at the cuffs. His shoes shined not by wealth, but by effort. He was not part of the parade. He was serving them. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, her world tilted. His eyes held no arrogance, no hunger for empire, no hunger for her father's fortune. Instead, they carried something dangerous, something rare: kindness. Her lips curved, almost invisible, but enough to be noticed by no one except him. In a hall filled with men desperate to be chosen, Evelyn Roswell's heart whispered its first choice. Not a prince, not an heir. Not the richest of men, but the stranger carrying empty glasses. Ethan sat at the edge of the living room couch, his mind restless. The ticking of the antique clock on the wall seemed louder than usual, almost echoing in the silence of the mansion. His daughter Lily was upstairs drawing in her sketchbook, something she often did when she felt lonely. Ethan had everything: wealth, respect, a thriving company. But he knew Lily lacked something vital: companionship. He remembered the way she lingered at the playground, quietly watching other kids play, yet never daring to join them. His heart ached every time he saw that. That night over dinner, he cleared his throat. "Lily," he began gently, his voice softer than usual, "I want to ask you something very important." Her little head tilted, curiosity flashing in her big brown eyes. "What is it, Daddy?" Ethan leaned forward, folding his hands. "Would you like a sister?" For a moment, silence filled the room. Lily blinked rapidly, as though she hadn't quite heard him right. "A sister?" she repeated, almost whispering. "Yes," Ethan nodded, smiling faintly. "Someone to play with. Someone to share your secrets with. Someone who could be your friend, always." Lily's face lit up, though she tried to hide it. "Do I get to choose her?" she asked carefully. Ethan chuckled softly. "If you want to. Yes, you'll choose." The idea struck him as unusual, maybe even reckless, but something inside him believed this was the right path. Letting Lily choose meant she would truly accept the girl as her own sister, not as someone Ethan imposed on her. Later that week, Ethan took her by the hand and they went to the city. The plan wasn't to visit wealthy families or adoption agencies first. Instead, Ethan drove down a street where he usually never stopped, a row lined with shelters, places he had only ever donated to from afar.
Daddy, why are we here?
Lily asked, her small hand clutching his tightly. Because, Ethan said, his voice firm yet warm, true family isn't chosen by wealth, it's chosen by the heart. Inside the shelter, children's laughter echoed faintly, though some voices carried sadness. Lily's wide eyes scanned the room. Some children played with broken toys, others quietly sketched or read books that were falling apart. And then in the corner, Lily froze. A little girl about her age sat by herself, holding a tattered stuffed bear. Her hair was messy, her shoes too small, but her eyes, clear and gentle, looked up and met Lily's.
Daddy,
Lily whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Yes, sweetheart? Ethan asked, following her gaze. That's her, Lily said firmly, surprising Ethan with her certainty. That's my sister. Ethan's chest tightened as he looked at the girl. She was a stranger, homeless, with nothing but that bear clutched in her arms. Yet in Lily's eyes, she was already family. And for the first time in years, Ethan realized that maybe his daughter understood love better than he did. Evelyn sat at the edge of the grand dining table, her small fingers tracing patterns on the polished oak. The house was filled with silence, except for the occasional ticking of the golden clock on the mantelpiece. She wasn't used to silence anymore, not since she met Lily at the shelter. Her father, Mr. Harrington, the millionaire businessman, finally cleared his throat and broke the tension. Evelyn, he said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of authority, I allowed you to bring Lily here for one night. One, but now you must choose. Evelyn's head shot up, her wide, innocent eyes meeting her father's stern gaze. Choose, she whispered. Yes, Mr. Harrington continued, folding his arms across his chest. You can have a sister, someone who truly belongs here, from one of the best families. I will adopt for you. She will have manners, education, refinement. She'll fit into our world. Evelyn's chest tightened. But Lily is my sister, Mr. Harrington shook his head sharply. No, Evelyn. Lily is a child of the streets. She has no background, no proper upbringing. She doesn't belong in this life. You deserve better. Tears stung Evelyn's eyes, but she held them back. Papa, you told me once. Family isn't about blood. It's about love. Lily loves me, and I love her. Her words pierced him, but his face stayed cold, carved like stone. Love doesn't build a future. Stability does. A girl like Lily would only bring you shame later. Evelyn's lip trembled. She makes me happy. Isn't that enough? Mr. Harrington leaned forward, lowering his voice. You have until tomorrow to decide. Choose Lily, and she stays here under my roof. But understand, Evelyn, that I cannot give her the life you dream of. Choose the girl I select, and you'll have a sister who can stand proudly by your side in society. Evelyn felt her world collapsing around her. The laughter she shared with Lily at the playground, the warmth of her hand when they whispered secrets at night, it all flashed before her eyes. After dinner, Evelyn sneaked into the guest room where Lily sat curled up on the bed, holding the stuffed toy Evelyn had given her. Lily, Evelyn whispered, her voice cracking. Lily looked up, her eyes full of quiet fear. He doesn't want me here, does he? Evelyn hugged her tightly, fighting the tears. Don't listen to him. You're my sister. I'll prove it. Lily clung to her, whispering, I don't need riches, Evelyn. I just don't want to lose you. That night, as Evelyn lay awake staring at the chandelier, she made a silent vow. Tomorrow, she would not let anyone, not even her father, take Lily away from her. She would fight, even if it meant breaking her father's heart. The following weekend, the mansion was buzzing with life. A charity gala had been arranged. An event where wealthy families gathered, dressed in their finest, sipping wine and discussing investments. Daniel knew it was a show, a display of power, a reminder to the city of who still ruled its heart. Amelia, however, wasn't interested. She sat quietly in her velvet dress, her hair pinned up, her tiny hands folded in her lap. To the world, she was a porcelain doll, silent, perfect, untouchable. Yet Daniel knew her silence wasn't just selective. It was her shield. But as the music played and guests chatted, a murmur spread through the hall. At the very edge of the grand doors, a small figure stood. It was Sophie, the homeless girl Amelia had befriended. Her dress was tattered, her shoes worn thin, and her wide, frightened eyes scanned the glowing chandeliers as if she had stepped into another universe. "Who let her in here?" a woman whispered sharply, covering her pearl necklace as though Sophie might snatch it away. "This is a private event," another man sneered, motioning to the guards.
Sophie shrank back, her fingers tightening around a little rag doll she clutched to her chest. It was clear she hadn't come to cause trouble. She looked lost. Before Daniel could speak, Amelia suddenly rose from her chair. For the first time in months, her movements weren't timid or reluctant. They were purposeful. She walked quickly through the crowd, ignoring the gasps and stares, and stopped in front of Sophie. The two girls stared at each other. Then Amelia reached out, taking Sophie's hand. Her lips parted, trembling as though holding back a storm. And then, her voice broke through. "Don't hurt her." The entire hall went silent. Glasses froze mid-air, jaws dropped, and Daniel felt his heart stop. His daughter, who hadn't spoken a single word to anyone in years, had just spoken loudly enough for the world to hear. Guests turned to Daniel, stunned. Some whispered, some smiled, others frowned in disapproval. But none of it mattered, because in that moment, all Daniel could see was his daughter's trembling lips and Sophie's relieved eyes. Amelia pulled Sophie closer, standing protectively in front of her. "She's my friend." Her words came out broken but clear. Daniel's throat tightened. He had begged for years to hear her voice, spent fortunes on doctors, therapists, and specialists. Yet the cure, the miracle, had walked in barefoot with a rag doll in her hands. And for the first time, Daniel realized his daughter didn't need more riches. She needed someone who truly understood her. The room erupted into chaos. The hall was no longer filled with music and laughter. It was filled with whispers, gasps, and disapproving stares. The richest families in the city had gathered to celebrate themselves, and now all eyes were fixed on a homeless child holding the hand of a billionaire's daughter. Daniel stood frozen for a moment. He could see the storm brewing. Wealthy men exchanged smirks, women clutched their jewels tighter, and the murmurs grew sharper. "This is disgraceful." Daniel's lost control of his household. Imagine letting a beggar walk in. The word stung, not because Daniel cared what they thought, but because he knew what was coming. His pride, the empire he had built brick by brick, was being tested right here in front of everyone. A board member of his company, a stout man with a polished mustache, stepped forward. "With all due respect, Mr. Daniel," he said, his voice dripping with false courtesy, "this display is unbecoming. Shall I have the girl escorted out?" He gestured to the guards. Before Daniel could respond, Amelia's small voice cracked again. "No." It was shaky, but it cut through the noise like a blade. She gripped Sophie's hand tighter, as if daring anyone to touch her friend. Sophie, though trembling, straightened her back, looking at the crowd with wide, defiant eyes. Daniel's chest tightened. Every instinct as a father told him to shield Amelia, to end this spectacle before it spiraled. But another part of him, the part that had watched his daughter suffer in silence for years, knew this was her moment. He couldn't crush it. He stepped forward, his voice deep and steady. "She stays." The room fell quiet. The board member blinked, taken aback. "Mr. Daniel, this is highly inappropriate." "Allowing that child—" Daniel cut him off, his voice sharp. "That child," he said, glancing at Sophie, "is a guest in my home. And if anyone here thinks themselves too important to breathe the same air, then my doors are open. Leave." A gasp rippled through the hall. Daniel never raised his voice in public, never broke the image of perfect composure. But tonight he had chosen his daughter over his pride. Amelia's eyes shimmered, as if she understood what he had done for her. For the first time, Daniel saw a spark in her, a piece of his little girl returning. But in the crowd, Daniel also saw another expression: rage. The board members, business partners, and rivals he had kept in check for years now smelled weakness. A billionaire choosing a homeless child over his reputation? To them, it was blood in the water. Daniel knew the truth. Tonight, he hadn't just defended his daughter. He had declared war. The party ended in fractured silence. Guests left quickly, muttering under their breath. The scent of perfume and champagne lingered, but the joy had been sucked out of the air. Daniel stood near the grand doors, watching each business associate file past him. Not one of them shook his hand. Not one gave him their usual flattering smile. Instead, there were stiff nods, sharp glares, and the unmistakable weight of judgment. For the first time in years, Daniel felt his empire tremble. Amelia clung to Sophie's hand, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. But when the last guest left and the doors finally closed, her bravado cracked. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They all hate us now, don't they?" Daniel crouched down to her height, placing both hands on her shoulders. "They don't matter," he said firmly. "Not one of them matters. What matters is you. You were brave tonight. Braver than me." Amelia's lips quivered, but Sophie gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. She wasn't alone, Sophie whispered softly, her eyes downcast. Daniel looked at the little girl. Dirty shoes, threadbare dress, yet standing there with the quiet strength of someone who had faced the world's cruelty and survived it. He felt something stir inside him, a question he had buried for years. Had he been raising Amelia in a mansion, but starving her heart of the very things that mattered most? But before he could answer himself, his phone buzzed. One message, then another. Then another. He pulled it from his pocket. "Board meeting. Tomorrow urgent. Investors concerned about your behavior." "Daniel, what have you done?" The walls of his empire were already closing in. Daniel slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at the two girls. Amelia's eyes filled with fear, but Sophie's gaze, it was different. There was no fear, only understanding. She had seen men like this world before. She had lived under its cruelty. Daniel straightened. The price of his defiance was clear. He would lose allies, he would lose respect in their world, and perhaps even his throne as the city's king. But as Amelia leaned against him and Sophie smiled weakly through her exhaustion, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. For the first time in years, he hadn't lost himself. Morning came with heavy skies. Rain streaked across the tall glass windows of Daniel's skyscraper headquarters. The city below looked blurred, like even it was holding its breath. Daniel adjusted his tie in the mirror. For years, this ritual had been armor. A silk tie, a tailored suit, the perfect shield for any battle. But today, the armor felt heavier. When he stepped into the boardroom, the tension was palpable. The long mahogany table lined with men in dark suits, once symbols of his power, now looked like a jury. "Daniel," one of the senior members began, his tone sharp and cold. "We'll get straight to it. Last night's scene was unacceptable." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. "Do you understand what you've done? Public image is everything. And you've chosen to humiliate us, your investors, your allies, over a charity case?" The words burned through the air. "Charity case," Daniel clenched his jaw. He rose slowly from his chair, his shadow stretching across the polished floor. "Her name is Sophie," he said firmly. "This isn't about some girl, it's about stability. If you continue down this path, you will drag us all down with you." Daniel's voice dropped lower, but it carried more weight than ever. "For years you've praised me for building this empire, for making you rich. And yet the first time I choose integrity over appearances, you treat me like a liability." Silence. "My wealth, my reputation, they exist because I never bent to fear. Last night I didn't bend to you. I bent to my daughter. But Daniel, investors are already pulling out. Stocks are trembling. We can't afford—" "Then let them pull," Daniel snapped. "Let them take their money." Some looked outraged, some looked terrified, but a few looked moved. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes sharp as steel. "Sophie stays. Amelia deserves to grow up in a world where kindness isn't treated as weakness. If that costs me everything, so be it." For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, one of the older board members set down his pen. "You're making a dangerous choice, Daniel. But maybe. It's the first real choice you've made in years." The night was heavy with unspoken words. Ethan sat by the window of the guest room Mr. Whitaker had given him, staring out at the glittering skyline. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's wide, innocent gaze, the way her tiny hand had clutched his shirt when she spoke to him. Why him? Why not her father, or the doctors, or even her mother? Down the hall, Mr. Whitaker sat in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey. The house was dark, quiet except for the occasional tick of the grandfather clock. His mind replayed the same scene over and over. His daughter breaking her silence, and not for him. He had built an empire worth billions, had commanded rooms full of the world's most powerful men. But he couldn't command a single word from his little girl. Instead, she had chosen Ethan, the poor stranger's son. The next morning, the tension lingered. Ethan was preparing to leave when Mrs. Whitaker stopped him in the hallway. Her eyes were tired, her voice soft. "Ethan," she said, "do you know why Lily spoke to you?" He hesitated. "No, ma'am, I don't understand it myself." Whitaker looked down, then back at him with tears gathering in her eyes. Lily's silence, it isn't random. When she was 2, she witnessed something no child should ever see. A business rival of my husband tried to hurt us. She hasn't spoken since. The therapists say her mind locked itself away for protection. She hasn't trusted anyone enough to open that door again. Until you. Ethan froze. The weight of her words settled deep in his chest. Lily wasn't just a silent girl. She was a child carrying trauma heavier than her small shoulders could bear. And somehow, without even trying, he had become the key to unlocking her voice. Behind them, Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat. He had been listening. His face was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched. "If what my wife says is true," he said sternly, "then you're the reason Lily spoke." "Which means you're not leaving." Ethan's heart skipped. "Sir, No excuses," Mr. Whitaker cut him off. "You'll stay. You'll spend time with her. If she spoke to you once, maybe she'll do it again. I'll pay you, of course." "I don't want your money," Ethan interrupted before he could stop himself. The room went silent. Mr. Whitaker's cold stare locked onto him, but Ethan stood firm. "I don't care about money. I want to help her, that's all." For the first time, the hardened CEO looked unsettled. He was a man who had bought everything: power, respect, luxury. But here was someone who couldn't be bought. And Lily, who had been quietly watching from the staircase, whispered a single word: "Stay." The sound cut through the air like a miracle. Ethan turned to her, stunned. Mr. Whitaker's stern mask cracked for just a moment. And in that fragile silence, something shifted in the household forever. The mansion buzzed with excitement. That evening, Mr. Alastair was hosting a grand party for the city's elite. Chandeliers glittered, violins played, and servants rushed about with trays of golden-rimmed glasses. It was supposed to be a night of pride and reputation for the powerful CEO. But to Alara, it felt suffocating. She sat quietly in her emerald dress, hair perfectly styled by the finest stylist, but her heart was heavy. Her mind wasn't on the party. It was on Anna, the girl with no shoes, no home, yet the warmest smile Alara had ever seen. Guests praised Mr. Alastair's wealth and success, but no one noticed how restless his daughter looked. She clutched a small ribbon Anna had given her days ago, hidden inside her sleeve like a secret talisman. Then something unexpected happened. As the evening progressed, Alara's tutor whispered to her, "Your father will introduce you to an important guest tonight. The son of another billionaire. You must smile, Alara, you must look happy." But Alara froze, her mind screamed, "Not him. Not anyone from this world. I already chose my sister." As the crowd gathered, Mr. Alastair took the stage with his glass raised high. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced proudly, "tonight is not only about business. Tonight is about family, about the future, and about my daughter." The spotlight fell on Alara. Applause echoed, cameras flashed. She stood there, trembling, her ribbon clutched tightly in her palm. Then, in a moment no one could have predicted, Alara whispered, her voice barely audible but sharp enough to silence the hall. "I already have a sister." The crowd gasped. Glasses dropped. Mr. Alastair's smile faltered for the first time. And in the stunned silence, everyone waited to see what the silent daughter would do next. The silence inside the hall was heavier than the chandeliers above. Ilara's words echoed like thunder. "I already have a sister." Whispers spread among the guests. Cameras clicked, reporters' pens scratched hurriedly. A man in the crowd even muttered, "What does she mean? She has no siblings." Mr. Alastair's jaw tightened. For the first time, the mighty CEO looked human, rattled, cornered. He forced a smile and laughed nervously. "My daughter is overwhelmed," he said. "Just nerves before the big announcement." But Alara stepped forward. Her emerald dress shimmered under the light, her eyes burning with quiet fire. She raised her chin. "No, father, I am not nervous. I am telling the truth." Gasps, murmurs. A few guests even pulled out their phones, recording the scene. Ilara's voice did not shake as she spoke again, louder this time. "Her name is Anna. She is brave, she is kind. She is my sister, not by blood but by choice. And while you feast here, she starves in the cold. You speak of family, father, but what about her?" The entire room froze. Mr. Alastair's face drained of color. His empire, his image, his carefully built walls of perfection. Ilara was tearing them apart brick by brick in front of his allies and rivals alike. "Enough!" he thundered, slamming his glass onto the podium. Ilara stepped down this instant, but Alara didn't move. For the first time in her life, she wasn't silent. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. I will not. You told me to smile, to be silent, to obey. But tonight I will not obey. Tonight I will speak for Anna, for every person you choose not to see. Gasps. Applause from a corner. Hesitant at first, then stronger. The guests began to shift, divided, some horrified, some impressed. Mr. Alistair's empire had just cracked, and everyone was watching. And Alara knew this was only the beginning of the storm. The ballroom had become a battlefield, not of swords and steel, but of truth and pride. Alara stood tall under the golden lights, her voice still hanging in the air. Across from her, Mr. Alistair's face was crimson with rage, veins pulsing at his temple. He pointed a trembling finger at her. "You are my daughter," he hissed. "You will not shame me in front of the world." But Alara didn't flinch. The years of silence, the years of obedience, the years of living as nothing but his reflection, they shattered in that moment. "No, father," she said firmly. "I am no one's shadow. Not yours, not this empire's. I am Alara, and I will no longer play the part you wrote for me." The hall erupted, half gasping in scandal, half cheering in admiration. Someone shouted, "She's braver than all of you combined." Reporters scribbled furiously, their headlines writing themselves. Mr. Alistair's mask slipped. His voice shook with desperation now, not anger. "You would throw everything away for her? For some street girl?" Alara's lips curved into the faintest smile. "No, father, not for some street girl. For my sister. For the family I chose, the family you never understood." And then, she did the unthinkable. Alara unclasped the diamond necklace around her throat, the one symbol of her father's wealth, and let it fall with a sharp clink onto the marble floor. "I don't want your crown," she whispered. "I choose freedom. I choose Anna." The hall broke into chaos. Voices shouting, flashes blinding, some calling her a fool, others a hero. But Alara didn't wait for approval. She turned, walking through the sea of stunned faces, her emerald dress trailing like a banner of defiance. At the grand doors of the hall, Anna waited. Tears welled in her eyes as Alara reached for her hand. "Are you sure?" Anna whispered. "You're leaving everything?" Alara squeezed her sister's hand tighter. "No, Anna, I'm leaving nothing. Tonight I finally take back my life." And together, they stepped into the night. Behind them, the empire trembled. Ahead of them, the unknown awaited. But for the first time, Alara wasn't afraid. She wasn't running from her father anymore. She was running toward herself. And that was her victory.